This is the Obstacle Overcomer Podcast, Episode 2. This is part 2 of Overcoming Fears, and today we are talking about the 7 types of fears. Today's show is inspired by Ruth Soukup's 7 Fear Archetypes. We'll be discussing the different archetypes, how they apply to our personal fears, and tips on how to overcome them. This is the Obstacle Overcomer Podcast, dedicated to helping you overcome the obstacles that have been holding you back. My name is Nikki, and I'm a mother, author, empowerment speaker, singer, narrative changer, and obstacle overcomer. Each week, I'll be bringing you both the spiritual and practical tools that will empower you to overcome the challenges that you've been facing. You have the power to change the narrative of your life. You don't have to accept things as is. And always remember, obstacles are not barriers. They are stepping stones. The procrastinator. When you're most afraid of making a mistake, here's how your fear might be holding you back from creating a life you love. You might miss opportunities to grow through failure. You sometimes burden yourself with unreasonably high standards. You tend to lose valuable time for personal growth. You often classify mistakes as catastrophes, not opportunities. Typically, you would rather do nothing and play it safe than attempt something valiant and fail. At a glance, you're about perfectionism, slow execution. You have high standards, and your finished work is usually excellent. You're a perfectionist who likes things to be done right. You fear making a mistake and have trouble pulling the trigger. You can spend too much time researching and planning. And you typically produce high quality work. You tend to be well organized and you give great attention to detail. So I just shared with you all some of the results from my fear archetype assessment that I recently took by Ruth Soukup. And I'm giggling. I still actually chuckle every time I read it because it is so on point. That assessment is so on point. And for some of you who are listening who probably recognize yourself in some of those characteristics, was that not on point? I just want to put this quick disclaimer in there. I am not sick. I know I sound like it, but I am dealing with allergies. So if any of you have any all-natural remedies to help me with allergies, where I live, the mold count is extremely high here. So I do want to apologize ahead of time. I will sound stuffed up and stuffy, but if you know any natural remedies, please shoot me a message. And I'm down to try almost anything at this point. So I've been following Ruth Soukup for several years now. She's absolutely amazing. Some of you may know her from her Living Well planners or her wildly popular Living Well Spending Less blog. But many may know her from her Do It Scared platform, where she encourages people to take action despite their fears. And so she created this fear assessment that helps you to understand your fear archetype. Now, I took it, and I want to say, first of all, it's super easy. It does not take long at all. And when you take the assessment, you are asked not to overthink your answers. However, you are asked to be completely honest. And so I did take the assessment. It may have taken me 10 minutes, and I only say 10 minutes because on some of the questions, I found myself wanting to overthink it. And I kept saying, you know what? Put the first thing that is honestly in your heart and that comes to mind. After taking the assessment, I immediately received my results. And I have to say again, it was so on the money for me, but it helped me to really understand why some of the fears I have exist, and also why I have some of the habits that I have. Along with what we talked about last week in part 1 of Overcoming Fears, going back and identifying the origin of some of my fears and where they originated, figuring out if they were from something that I experienced or something that I learned. I take that information along with what I learned through this fear assessment, and it really helps me to understand some of my characteristics and habits. But it also goes along with what we talked about last week, shining the light on the fear and acknowledging what those fears are so I can overcome them. And the same thing for you. So if you have not had the opportunity to listen to part 1, we talked about a lot of great stuff. I really would love for you to go ahead and check that out. When Ruth addresses the fear archetypes, she really breaks down the characteristics of each of them. And trust me, it is not what you think. We're going to briefly talk about each one of them, starting with number 1, which happens to be the one that I am, and that is the procrastinator. And usually when you hear the word procrastinator, what comes to mind is someone who's always putting things off because they're lazy or they're just unmotivated. But according to my assessment report, a procrastinator procrastinates out of fear, not out of laziness. It's fear-based, not unmotivation. And according to girlboss.com, who has a great summation of the 7 fears, the procrastinator is often obsessed with the end product being perfect, that the planning and the researching phase never quite gets wrapped up. So that makes both getting started and completing projects difficult. The perfectionist wants things done right, but there's also a fear there of making a mistake. So then you have trouble pulling the trigger, which goes back to that never-ending planning and researching phase. Now, in the end result, it's going to be high quality with great attention to detail, but the execution is going to be slow. All because there is a fear there of it not being perfect, it not being right. You feel embarrassed about not achieving perfection, and so that prevents you from getting started. To make it work for you, Soukup advises that you try reframing your life as a series of lessons rather than mistakes. And deadlines can be a major game changer if you find yourself getting bogged down by everything having to be right. And if you know you're spending way too much time in the preparation stage, start setting some deadlines and stick to them. Find yourself accountability partners or set up some type of system that requires you to meet your deadline and focus on turning in your work on time rather than your work being perfect. Archetype number 2, the rule follower. You are dedicated to adhering to clear definitions of what's right and what's wrong, even if it's at the expense of your own success. You may have thoughts like, I'm most scared about whether or not I'm making the right decision. I often think that if I make the decision to go with this option, then what am I missing out on by not choosing the other option? So for the rule follower, the key is to distance yourself from the notions of what is allowed or accepted. According to Soukup, the key is to basically come up with a set of rules and principles for yourself, not according to what everyone else tells you that you should do, because the rules that you're following are ones that have been set by someone else and by their own definition. You've got to learn to start setting and making rules for yourself according to your life and your principle so you can create the life that you want. Albert Einstein said, you have to color outside the lines once in a while if you want to make your life a masterpiece. Take a chance, take some risks. I really believe most rule followers on the inside, they really want to try those things that go against the grain. I think they really want to try to go left instead of always going right. I think part of why they stick to the rule is there is no accountability if something goes wrong. If I stick to what everyone says I should do, then no matter what happens, I'm going with the herd. If I try to do something different and something happens, I stick out, I'm held responsible. But then all the while, you're unhappy. The unhappiness that you feel when you're not being authentic And when you're not going after or trying or doing something that you really want to do because you're so busy making sure that all of the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, that you almost feel guilty along with exhilarated when you do something that is outside of the box. Challenge yourself to do something different. Start with something simple, like if you always travel the same route to work, tomorrow try a different route. Like, just start with little simple things to kind of change up your routine. If there's something that you've always wanted to do and it's been inside of you and it's just a desire, but you are afraid because it goes against what everyone else does or thinks, as long as it's within the law, then try it. I challenge you to try it. And when you do, start taking notice of how you feel. Was it as scary doing it as you thought it would be just in your mind? Do you feel exhilarated? Do you feel energized when you're trying something different? Does it bring you joy and some relief that you finally try? The next one will be number 3, the people pleaser. If you're a people pleaser, that means you struggle most with the fear of being judged or worrying most about others being disappointed in you. And this can manifest as difficulty with boundaries or saying no. This used to be my archetype. This was me through and through many years ago. I wanted to be loved and accepted so badly that I was more concerned with how other people felt and not disappointing them than I was with how it made me feel or disappointing myself or even God. You may have thoughts like, I am afraid of looking stupid or having people think I'm wasting time and of disappointing those that I love or making them angry in some way. That was me to the T. And then when someone would get angry with me, it was my fault. So then I found myself trying to do any and everything to fix it, to make them happy. And it didn't matter. Whatever that was, I was willing to do it to make them happy, to keep them loving me and liking me. If you are a people pleaser, you're likely a fantastic employee and friend or mentor because of your considerate nature. So very true. But Ruth says finding a mentor or teacher with a totally different archetype can help you learn how to say no and give yourself permission to prioritize you. Now, I would tell you, I have a best friend who, during the time when I was really dealing with this particular archetype, she had absolutely no problem with telling people no. If it was not in her spirit to do it, if it just didn't sit right with her, if it conflicted with her schedule, if she just didn't want to do it, she had no problem with saying no. And it wasn't about hurting anybody's feelings. It was about putting herself first. And just watching her be like this and watching her interact with people and telling them no, it really helped me. It taught me a lot. It really taught me that it's okay to put myself first and to prioritize myself. Now, fast forward, it took me a lot of years to really begin to implement. I will say that when I started implementing the principles that I needed to overcome this particular fear, I started losing a lot of relationships. I did. And that's just to be honest. I started losing a lot of relationships. You know, you start to find out the people who are there just because of what you're willing to give or do for them. And when you begin to prioritize you, they begin to feel like they are no longer the priority. It's not that you want the people in your life to feel that way, but there has to be a point in your life where you decide you are important. And you've got to start making your life decisions based on what is best for you. Now, according to Psych Central's 21 tips to stop being a people pleaser, and I'm just going to read just a few of them. Number 1 is realize that you have a choice. People pleasers often feel like they have to say yes when someone asks for help. Remember that you always have a choice to say no. Number 2, set your priorities. Knowing your priorities and your values helps you to put the brakes on people pleasing. I cannot tell you how true that is. If you don't value yourself and you don't value your priorities as priorities, then it's really easy for you to allow people to come in and consume your time because you don't value your own schedule. But when you put priorities on your priorities, it's really, really easy when someone asks you to do something and is going to interfere with something that you have to do. It makes it very easy to say no. Number 3, stall. This one is key, stall. Whenever someone asks you for a favor, it's perfectly okay to say that you'll need to think about it. This gives you the opportunity to consider if you can commit to helping them. I heard Steve Harvey say one time, when he started making a lot of money, he would get phone calls all the time from people wanting to borrow money. And every time someone called, they always called and it was an emergency. It was, Steve, I need this right now. You've got to do this for me right now. And for a while he would do it, but he said one day it just hit him that he didn't owe anyone anything and he really wanted to break that. So he began to basically use this particular method. Someone would call and he wouldn't answer the phone on purpose. He said more than likely they're going to leave a message. The message would usually say, it's important. There's something I got to have right away. I need X amount of dollars or I need this favor. He said he would intentionally not respond for a week or so. In most of the scenarios, the emergency would have either gone away or they would have found a way to work it out themselves. He said he stopped making other people's emergencies his emergencies. They're going to always make their business your priority. So hear me when I say that one was key for me as well. Number 4, set a time limit. If you do agree to help out, limit your time frame. Let the person know that you're only available from 10 a.m. to 12. I can only do it until 2 o'clock. If you set a time frame, make sure you stick to it. The last one will be say no with conviction. You don't have to say it with attitude, just say it with conviction. Here's a good example. Sometimes your no is with a question. I don't know. I don't think I'll be able to. You're leaving a lot of room and opportunity for someone to come in and help you decide to say yes. Saying no with conviction sounds like I won't be able to do that. I already have something scheduled. Or you can be like my friend and just say, no, I don't want to do that. And the last one I'll go over is ask yourself, is it really worth it? I would add to that, is this something that I want to do because I want to do it? Or am I thinking about doing it because I feel like it'll make this person be happy with me? It'll make this person love me. It'll make this person not become angry with me. It'll make me a part of the group. They will accept me if I do this. If you do not begin to ask yourself these questions, you will find yourself saying yes to everything and having regrets for all of it. And I know that from experience. You'll do something with the hopes that it's going to make someone love you. And in the end, you'll realize that it doesn't, and then you're left with regrets. All right, let's move back to our archetypes. Number 4, it would be the outcast. Outcasts tend to outwardly appear fearless, but are secretly so afraid of rejection that they often reject others first. They may have thoughts like, I've learned that I can't rely on anyone, and if I want to get something done, I have to do it myself. That's good. I know y'all know some outcasts, and some of you may be. That may be your fear archetype. This fear is based on the fear of rejection or being rejected. And it also coincides with the people pleaser who also has a fear of being rejected. So if this is you as an outcast, since you are already self-motivated and you're willing to take risk, consider making that work for you by going into your own business. But remember, you cannot do it alone. And Girl Boss notes that Soukup definitely recommends forming a truth club where you can gain support and accountability from people you trust. Meet regularly to get thoughtful feedback and maintain your motivation to keep going. Also, because the thoughts are there where you feel like you cannot rely on anyone and that if you want something done, you have to do it yourself. Challenge yourself to actually start asking for help. Also, I would encourage you to start delegating tasks to others. Maybe start off small with delegating some simple tasks to your coworkers or your friends, your employees. But step outside of that comfort zone and give people the opportunity to help you. Maybe you're still holding on to the time that someone let you down or they abandoned you, like abandonment issues. Get to the root of why you have the thoughts that you have and the habits that you have as an outcast. Shine the light on that so you can overcome it, because this is not something that you want to stay. Now, you can make some of those characteristics work for you because you're so goal-oriented and self-motivated. Those are great qualities for starting a business. Being in management position, you just don't want it to go left and you become this island all on your own, and then you start becoming a self-proclaimed introvert. Start reaching outside of that thought pattern. Number 5, and we're almost done, is the self-doubter. The most dominant fear in your life is likely entrenched in deep feelings of insecurity about your own capabilities. You may describe yourself as stuck or even find yourself judging others who make the leap as a way of masking your own fears. That one is so real and so on point. I have had issues with self-doubt, and I will tell you, many times have I watched someone do what I desired to do, but was afraid, was insecure, was not sure of my own ability to do it. And there was so much jealousy there that I did judge it. I did scour my nose up at it. And some of you have done that. You find yourself scrolling social media, and that would be what the real definition of a hater is to me. Not the way we define it. You know, everybody got their haters. No. I mean, like people who literally sit and watch other people's lives through the small lens of social media, and you comment these ugly things. Where it really stems from is your own insecurity. You're looking at them live the life that you desire, but you fear because you don't think you're deserving, you're capable, you're worthy. So you judge them because it hides your own fear. You are hypocritical of yourself and of others, and there's a fear of not being enough. There's this really great article on positivityblog.com, and it's titled 13 Powerful Ways to Overcome Self-Doubt so you can finally move forward in life. This article is written by Henrik Edberg, and the first thing he advises to overcome self-doubt is to say stop. First, when your inner doubts bubble up, be quick. Don't let them spin out of control or grow from a whisper to a stream of discouraging sentences. Instead, talk back to the doubtful part of yourself. In your mind, say something or shout something like, no, we're not going down that road again. By doing so, you can disrupt the thought pattern and stop that inner self-doubter from taking over. That one is so very true. I practice it all the time. You have to start becoming mindful of your thoughts. Start thinking about what you're thinking about. And when the thoughts come in, instead of letting them run and take up valuable space in your mind, you have to evict them immediately. They are not paying rent. Evict them suckers out of your mind. When you hear them, arrest them, throw them out. Remind yourself, we're not going down this road. I'm not going to have those thoughts. That is not true. Those are lies. I mean, literally, that is when talking back to yourself is okay. And I do it all the time. Number 2 would be to look to the past and to wash yourself in the memories. Be real with yourself and ask yourself, how many times when I doubted myself or feared something would happen, how many times did that negative thing come into reality after I still took action? More often than not, it's just not as bad as you thought it was going to be. There were times when you did take the leap, when you did go ahead, you bit the bullet, you tried something, and it wasn't that bad. You may have been a little shaky at first, but you actually kind of felt exhilarated after you did it. You were proud of yourself after you did it. There may have been a time or two when you tried something and it didn't work out, but you can say, if you're very, very honest, that you learned something from the experience, even if it was just the experience of the experience. So don't let the small doubts become monsters in your head. Number 3, talk to someone about it. When you keep your thoughts on the inside, they become distorted, exaggerated, and not very much in line with reality or reasonable expectations. I love this advice. When you bring darkness into the light, it cannot exist. When a room is dark and you turn on the light, it illuminates everything. So those thoughts that are sitting in your mind, talk to someone about it. An accountability partner, a friend, a therapist, counselor. Talk to someone about it. And sometimes it does take a different set of eyes, a different mindset to give you a different perspective. Number 4 will be, don't get stuck in the comparison trap. If you compare yourself to other people all too often, to their successes and especially to their highlight reels that they share on social media, this self-doubt can quickly creep up. We've already hit on that. Do not compare your life with the success of anybody else or what you think is their success. I like to call it comparison-itis. Do not get sick with that. The last one that I'm going to mention from this article is, remember, people don't care that much about what you do or say. When you worry about what others may think or say if you do something, then the self-doubt can quickly become stronger and you get stuck in inaction and in fear. When that happens, remind yourself that the truth is people really don't care that much about what you do or not do. That is thetruth.com. We think people care more about us than they do. I'm not saying that people don't care about you. What I'm saying is, in the manner that you're so worried to the point that you would stay stagnant and not move because you think someone's going to say this or going to have their opinion about something, they really don't care. They're really not paying attention that much. And if they were to say something, once you've already done it, what can their words do? You've done it. So just keep that in mind. People really don't care as much as you think they do. It shouldn't stop you from doing what you've been so afraid to do. The number 6 archetype would be the excuse maker. Taking responsibility for your life choices and goals or lack thereof can be a major challenge. Rather than lead, you might find yourself often taking a backseat approach to life, allowing others to make decisions for you and therefore letting yourself off the hook. You don't want to be responsible. You don't mind taking the back seat. You know you need to be up leading the song. You rather be the background singer. You have thoughts like, I'd like to start my own business, but it feels like someone or something is always stopping me. I don't have time. I don't have money, and there's no one to show me what to do. You're always blaming someone else for your life decisions. I will be further in life if this person hadn't, or if my father hadn't have left. I would be further along if they hadn't hurt me. Although you do have this fear of taking a leadership position, it probably means you will be a great cheerleader for your friends and your coworkers. So that means you are a great encourager. You are a great support system. But the challenge for you is to stop being afraid to take the leadership role. Stop being afraid to take the responsibility. The reality is you could try something and it may not work out, and the responsibility would be on you. But the responsibility is on you if you never try. Number 2, you got to stop blaming other people for your decisions. You may have been abandoned. You may have been hurt, let down. Those things may be very, very true. But the decisions and the choices that you make for your life, they are not the responsibility of the person who did something to you. They're your responsibility in your life. If you want to get things done and you want to see these dreams come to pass and you want to get over this fear and you're ready to step out there and be bold and courageous, you are going to have to make the decision to stop making excuses, to stop blaming other people, and to be responsible for your own life. The very last one is the pessimist. The pessimist has experienced a lot of hardship and fears that there will be more. They tend to have a victim mindset. They struggle with the fear of adversity or pain. Like hardships are like stop signs. They may have thoughts like, I always try new things, but old problems always get in the way and drag me down. You may be or you may know someone who is a pessimist. I for sure have had pessimistic times in my life where I had gone through so many things, and every time something else would happen, it felt like this is never going to end. This is just a sign that I shouldn't do this. But that is fear-based. And it becomes a way of life, a way of thinking, and excuses. The definition of a pessimist is a person who tends to see the worst aspect of things or believe that the worst will happen, believes that the world is as bad as it could be, or that evil will ultimately prevail over good. If this is your archetype, change your perception. This archetype is centered around how you view or perceive something. In other words, it's all in how you look at something. There's a great quote by Alphonse Karr, and it says, "We can complain because rose bushes have thorns, or rejoice because thorns have roses." Isn't that good? It's all in the way you look at things. Challenge yourself to start paying attention to when you're getting negative in your thoughts and negative in your perception. Start reconditioning yourself to replace negative thoughts and words with positive and affirming and empowering words and thoughts. And make this your daily practice. You may have to do it over and over and over again, but if you commit to doing it, one day you'll look up and realize that you've overcome this fear. And now you change from being a pessimist to being more optimistic about your life and about the world around you. So we have gone over the 7 fear archetypes, how they apply to our own fears, and some tips on how we can overcome them. We just scratched the surface though, because there is so much more information available about them and about the fear assessment over on doitscared.com/assessment. If you've been struggling with fear in any way, I highly recommend that you take the assessment. It is very, very enlightening. I not only found my fear archetype, but I found that I identify with some of the characteristics of the other archetypes, and you may find that as well. The good thing about this is by identifying them, it helps us to overcome them. There's this really awesome book called Fervent, a woman's battle plan for a serious, specific, and strategic prayer. This book is written by Priscilla Shirer, and some of you may know her from the movie War Room. In her book, in chapter 6 or strategy 6, is titled Your Fears, Confronting Your Worries and Claiming Your Calling. I want to read this small insert from the beginning of that chapter that I think is so befitting as we're ending us talking about overcoming our fears. So this says, "If I were your enemy, I'd magnify your fears, making them appear insurmountable, intimidating you with enough worries until avoiding them becomes your driving motivation. I would use anxiety to cripple you, to paralyze you, leaving you indecisive, clinging to safety and sameness, always on the defensive because of what might happen. When you hear the word faith, all I want you to hear is unnecessary risk." All right, overcomers, I hope you have enjoyed today's show. Please be sure to join me next Thursday. And always remember, you are an overcomer. Thank you so much for joining me today. If this was your first time tuning in, welcome to the Overcomers family. I cannot adequately express my gratitude to all of you for tuning in today. If today's show helped or impacted you in any way, it would help me tremendously if you would review and rate today's episode. And please be sure to leave me a comment on whatever platform you are listening to this podcast. Also, be sure to connect with me over on Facebook and Instagram at the Obstacle Overcomer Podcast. And if you go ahead and hit that subscribe button, you will be notified every time there's a new episode available. And don't forget that sharing is caring. So please go ahead and tell a friend and share this with your loved one, because this will help me to reach those who really need a word to empower their lives. Again, thank you so much for tuning in. And don't forget that obstacles are not barriers. They are stepping stones. Talk to you next week.
Bye.